Hi everybody, welcome to Coding Beta. Today we're going to be talking about Laravel's custom validation rules. So as you know, Laravel comes with validation out of the box, and it's really pretty good. There's quite a bit of different validation functions you can do, comparing, making sure it's integers or strings and the length and all kinds of stuff. But every once in a while you come across a case that you can't quite do with the built-in functions. You need a little bit more specific to your application, and that's where custom validation rules come in. There's three different ways that you can define a custom rule. There's rule objects, which are my preferred way of doing it. There you're creating a new class that just contains all of the logic surrounding that specific validation rule. And once that's defined, you can use that throughout your application wherever you like. You can also do it with closures. The problem with that is, of course, when you define the closure, you're just defining it in line in that one location. And I feel like if you have a use case for some custom validation, it's not uncommon that you might need that in more than one place. So I like to always go ahead and make that rule object just so I have the flexibility of using that wherever I need. Lastly, you can also create a custom validation rule using an extension. The problem with that is, so extensions, they can be used throughout your application like the objects can, but they are registered in your service provider, in your app service provider. And I just find that that's not real discoverable. So by that I mean, if you go back to your code 6 or 12 months later, you might see that you're calling some validation, but you're not sure what that is, and you can't remember where was that defined, how do I get there. It's not quite as clear as having a class object where you can see exactly what's going on. So let's go ahead and dig in, and I'll show you a little bit of how this all looks. So let's see, first I'll show you, I've got just a quick form set up, and an example of why you might need some custom validation. So I said, let's say you imagine you've got an application that's helping people manage, say, job sites, something like that. And what you want to do is, for any given user, when they register with your application, they give you a zip code, and then you allow them to create jobs within X miles of that zip code. So what you need to do is, here we've got, okay, if I'm going to create a new job, I can give you the name of the job and the zip code of where that job is located. And then what we'd want to do here is validate that the zip code of the new job site is within their region, their area that they're allowed to create new jobs. So if we go over to code, I've got this store request, or I'm sorry, this store job form request. And the validation that it's currently doing is it's just looking for the name to be required, and currently it's saying the zip code needs to be 5 digits long. And that all, of course, you can do is, that's just out of the box validation, but the zip code here is where we want to replace that with our new custom validation rule that gives us that radius lookup that we're looking for. So the first step to do this is we need to create that rule object, and there's an artisan command that will let you do that. So we can say php artisan make rule, and then we name that rule. So let's call it zip code radius. So we run that, it says rule created successfully. And now you'll see over here in our app folder, it's created a new rules folder with the zip code radius rules right there. So now that we have that, we've got our constructor, and then we've got this passes function, and this is where all the logic goes, where you're going to get the name of the attribute that is being validated and the value of the attribute being validated. You can do whatever code you need here to return either a true or false of whether the value passes, whether you want to throw an error or not. If it fails, if you return false, then it's going to throw this message. And so here is where you can define what custom message do you want to pop up when they fail this validation check. So let's go ahead and fill out this passes function. The other thing that I did is I created this zip code service. You can imagine that this would be some sort of business logic where maybe it's connecting to your database. Maybe you have a zip code database, and let's say you've got the user, you can grab their zip code, and then you can do a radius search with the two zip codes and say, okay, you have to be under 25 miles or whatever the case may be. So if you look at that, I've got this check if zip code in user's region where you pass in the user and the zip code that you want to check against. For now, since I'm just doing this demo here, I'm just saying, okay, if the zip code entered starts with 1, we're going to return true. But we can go ahead and pretend that that's real, and so let's create a new zip code radius rule, and actually what I'm going to do here is, rather than, so of course we could create it up, we could create a zip code object equals new zip code radius, and then we could call that function on that object, or I'm sorry, not zip code radius, we want zip code service, and then we could, on that service, check if zip code in user's region. Rather than defining this or creating this object right here, instead what I'd like to do is use the real-time facades. So the way that works is up here, if I just add in facades slash, now what I can do is I can just do simply zip code service, check if zip code in user's region. And so that will kind of use a facade, create that facade in real time, call that function, and then I'm just going to return the result of that function. So again, let's say we're going to do auth user, so we're going to pass in the user, and then we're going to pass in the value of the field that's being validated against. Come down here to our message, and what do we want it to say if it doesn't pass? Let's just do something like zip code must be in user region, something simple like that. So that's all we needed to do. Now we've got our custom zip code radius rule, and now we can go ahead and use it. So let's go back to our store job form request and the validation that's being done here. When we're looking at the digits 5, we don't need that anymore, and instead we are going to do a new zip code radius rule, and that's all we need to do. We're telling it that to validate this zip code field, use this custom rule object, and everything should work out. So let's go back here and let's just put in some junk for the zip code and submit the job, and there we go. We've got zip code must be in user region. So again, it's failing, and it's passing back that custom message that we defined. Now, if we change it to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that starts with 1, so this should pass, and fair enough, there it goes. Let's try something else, another number, but it does not start with 1, so it should fail again. So that's really all there is to it. It's pretty straightforward, and it's a very powerful feature to be able to do a lot of kind of custom validation that's specific to your application. Another nice thing with these rule objects is, as I'm creating it right here, you could imagine if I had some more context and some more information that I need to pass in, I could pass in whatever values I needed to the constructor right here. I could define those as properties, and I could access them, use them, whatever I really needed to do. So that's about all there is to it. Hopefully that's helpful, and we'll see you next time.